Thank you for joining today's HFA webinar. I am Corey Warshawski, the Director of Membership here at the Home Furnishings Association and your host for today. We're joined by Dustin Baer, the Director of Digital Marketing with Home Furniture, and Laura Corey, the expert for the call today, and also the owner of Shoptelligence. Hey, how you both doing today?
Doing well, thank you.
Doing good, doing good. Thank you for joining. I'm super thrilled to have you both on the webinar today. Omnichannel, our conversation for today, really is circled around how to maximize customer interactions with that omnichannel strategy. And I'm excited to talk about this particular topic. Omnichannel is an interesting one. There's so many different facets and so many different avenues and a lot of challenges that are faced by retailers out there. And it's also one of those ones it's fast, it's evolving very quickly. It changes very rapidly because there's a lot of integration of technology and elements like that in there that can make things a little bit complicated for retailers out there. So super excited to have you both on the call to be able to talk through some of those challenges, discuss some of the things that Dustin, that Home is doing out there and that you guys have found success with. And Laura, to really be able to pick your brain and help to understand how we can maximize those experiences with those consumers that are across all of our different channels for the retailers that are out there. So let's just go ahead and jump right into things if you guys are good with that. And I wanted to start with something kind of on the basic side here. As I mentioned, Omnichannel has a lot of different, a lot of different tentacles, right? A lot of different facets. So Laura, if you don't mind, if I can ask you, can you give us kind of just a quick little definition and from your perspective on what Omnichannel really means?
Sure. So from my perspective, omnichannel is a term that really focuses on how the customer looks at you, the retailer, as a brand. The customer doesn't differentiate between their experience on site versus in-store versus post-purchase. They want to see a consistent experience and they use the channels interchangeably. So to me, omnichannel means, in a way, ubiquity around what the brand represents, what the interaction should be, and helping the shopper really interact with that brand or retailer however they want, wherever they want, using multiple channels together or one channel at a time, and being able to make it a consistent experience across.
Okay, awesome. As a reminder, before we go too far along here for those on the call today, if you have any questions as we're moving along, please drop those right into your chat box down there, and we'll make sure to try to answer those in real time throughout the call. It's definitely going to be an interesting topic, and I'm sure some great questions will come up. So we'd love to hear from you guys and love to give you the opportunity to get your questions answered live and in real time. Laura, just to kind of continue that conversation a little bit there, you mentioned, multiple channels, lots of different channels. Can you talk to us just very briefly about what some of those channels are? Is it only the e-commerce site and the in-store experience that we need to be thinking about? Or are there other elements and other avenues that are incorporated into the Omni experience that are important for us to be taking into consideration?
Yeah, I think there are several. So e-commerce, obviously, and store are two of the most obvious. But then when you think about how the consumer starts their journey, they typically start on third-party marketplaces or third-party inspiration sites, Instagram, Pinterest. Having a presence there and really having a brand and demonstrating what the brand means there is important. As well as after the shopper purchases, all of the interactions, email is a huge component of it. And the post-purchase follow-up, the text messaging, et cetera. So when you think about omni-channel, it's not just e-commerce to store and store to e-commerce. It's every touch point that a retailer can have with prospective customers as well as does have with all existing customers and shoppers.
So it's everything from that in-store experience, the website, the social media presence on all the different social platforms that are out there, inclusive of marketing, all of the above, right? Which everything any type of consumers have. Okay. Perfect. So thanks for that basic definition there, so we're all on the same page. I want to talk a little bit to start with some of the challenges. What are some of the biggest challenges that retailers are facing out there when it comes to the omnichannel, creating an omnichannel experience? It seems like, as I've kind of kept my finger on the pulse of that over the last 5 or 6 years, that a lot of organizations have a big focus on it. They understand the importance of it, but there's a lot of difficulty really taking and running strongly into the headwind and getting past that. So I want to ask both of you kind of two different paces. Dustin, I want to first ask you what are some of the challenges maybe that Home has faced in that scape, and then Laura, I'll circle back right afterwards and maybe ask you what are some of the top 2 or 3 or 4 challenges that you think retailers as a whole are facing in the larger space of things. So Dustin, if you don't mind talking to us a little bit about home, what were some of the things that you guys struggled as you kind of started looking into push into that omni-channel space? Was there any massive humps that you had to get past? What were some of the struggles that were challenging for you guys?
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, as Laura mentioned, there's a lot of different channels out there nowadays. I mean, gone is the day where it was you were in print and on TV and maybe the radio, and then your consumers, 99%, shopped in the store, a couple over the phone. Well, we're well past that. There's a plethora of channels out there that we've got to be on. And then for the true omni-channel to make that experience seamless, you need to integrate those channels and integrate that data back. And sometimes that's impossible, and other times you've got to lot of work to get integrations, whether it's a platform provider already has it out there, or you've got to use methods like using coupon codes or QR codes or something like that to indicate and track back to your in-store sales that has, that this was from this channel. This is where this came from. We got this consumer from there. And so the biggest hurdle is, home has run into in the past is just getting those integrations out there where we can and spending the technology time and investment, whether it's pulling in a third-party software as a service platform to help us out with that, or leveraging our own technology software development team to build out custom, either a custom program, custom integrations to pull that off. And so it's always challenging. It's never ending because there's a new, whether it's a new social media platform out there or a new digital marketplace that looks to be the next hot place for consumers to be at. And so it's an always ever moving goalpost.
Now you mentioned in that some of the way that you would approach that is looking for third-party vendors or outside sources to solve for some of those problems. Some of the time it was developing some I'll use the word coding, some coding internally to address those issues. For the retailers out there that maybe are a little bit less on the resource handed, right? They're a little bit smaller. They don't have as many deep pockets when it comes to outsourcing and getting someone else to come in and do some of those things. Any tips or recommendations for them in terms of kind of getting things started and getting moving along in their omnichannel strategy?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, depends on your capabilities of your existing systems, whether you've got a development team or not who can do that, or, an outsourced company who can help you out. Also then what third-party platforms, Laura mentioned email. There's varying degrees of email marketing platforms out there and can do more powerful things. So the more the features, obviously, comes sometimes usually the more the expense. But if you want to get to omni-channel and you want to personalize your communication with the consumers in that channel, you need to have a platform that can support that. Now, you may or may not be able to integrate, and that depends on the capabilities of that platform. But even simple things of triggering post-purchase email series or recommended products for their second look of, you bought a living room set and recommending area rugs and decor and getting a kind of a trigger-based email out there. If you don't have the integrations, if your point of sale system, you can at least export those consumers and their email addresses out there and do a manual import in the email marketing. It gets you the personalization. It gets you that kind of customized interaction with the consumer without having, all the headaches or the time developed to get a direct integration with that platform. So obviously the scale all depends on the capabilities of what you've got. But there are ways with a smaller team to take small, simple steps and still work towards creating that omni-channel experience and personalized experience for the consumer.
Perfect, excellent. I want to also touch on one other thing that you mentioned, Dustin. You said gone are the days that print, radio, and TV were your main sources, right? That it's much larger than that today than it was in the past. Does home still do any marketing through print, radio, or television?
We still do. Some. It's not nearly like we used to. I mean, you look nowadays. I mean, the circulation numbers are dropping, every year. I think I saw recently Pew Research a couple of years ago mentioned. I think 2018 was the lowest circulation levels since like 1940. And so you're seeing that people are shifting more to digital. I mean, to everybody think of themselves. I mean, how often do you get, the newspaper to your home versus, you get it through your phone, your tablet, or your browser, or through your email. And so, we're still in those spaces. We haven't abandoned them completely, but we're not in them like we used to be. And more and more, it's focused on digital and all the different digital channels, whether it's social media, connected TV, email marketing, and and search.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's a powerful medium in order to be able to get a lot of consumer data to understand your shoppers, what they're buying, where they're visiting, where they're spending their time. Are you able to do any of those data crunch? Are you able to do any data crunching around print, radio, and TV advertising in order, like, I guess the root of my question, Dustin, is how do you incorporate the omni-channel experience into print media and, print, radio, and television? Is that something you guys are able to accomplish at all, or any tips or advice there?
We haven't been able to accomplish anything on there because it's not an area we've kind of targeted for that. I mean, I've seen things from other retailers in the past. We just haven't implemented ourselves. You can do things again. I mentioned like QR codes. Well, if you've got the space in your print, in your digital your physical print, you could put QR codes in there, or you could put custom coupon codes in there that could link you either to a custom webpage on the site, or if the consumer uses this coupon code, obviously I can link that. That was only in that media. But we personally haven't explored that yet.
Dustin, you were saying that through print, radio, and TV, it's more of a challenging element for incorporating that omni-channel strategy and utilizing those in the same fashion, which makes sense, because one of the things that I think that our retailers out there need to think about, and Laura, I'd love to get your perspective on this one as well, is you mentioned there's a lot of channels out there for delivering and creating that omni-channel experience. But obviously, with so many channels out there, it's very difficult, very challenging for a retailer to spread their resources across all of those channels, right? Any tips or advice on the best approach to analyzing that and understanding which channel is most effective and where they should really be focusing on in that space?
Yeah, I mean, you got to run the numbers. You got to look at it. And hopefully you've got a channel or a platform that has analytics that you can link back to, whether it's traffic to your website or even is able to help to link store conversions to marketing targeting in that channel. Not every channel's got that capabilities, and some of the capabilities, even us, have ran into, we're not big enough because they want bigger spends, bigger bigger target consumer base for some of those links to have in. So it all depends on the channel, and you got to look and take the numbers when you can and look at, okay, what's effective, and does this seem to drive, whether it's more in-store traffic, more e-commerce traffic, more e-commerce conversions, and then start adjusting dials and doing tests on, okay, this does seem to move, our traffic numbers. So we're going to put a little bit more money, more spend into this channel and see if if we can scale this out or not. But I mean, it's a lot of testing is usually what it ends up being.
Keeping a close eye on things and making sure you're spending your time and money in the right spots, right? Beautiful.
Exactly.
So let's circle back. Dustin, thank you for sharing some of the challenge that Home has faced. Laura, I'd like to throw that ball right back in your court and think about it from a larger perspective of all retailers out there and some of the experiences you've seen. Are there like 2 or 3 challenges you can think of that are most common that a retailer is going to face as they're working to maximize that experience for consumers and their omni-channel strategy?
Yeah, I think the number one is customer identification and enabling suspend and resume type capabilities. So understanding and leveraging the data across channels to continue the interaction. So, as a shopper, you might start on one of these third-party sites, make it onto the website, do a bunch of stuff on the website, and then the consumer doesn't want to have to go into the store and start all over, right? And then they don't want to have to go into the store, find a bunch of stuff, decide, I'm not ready to make a decision, and then start back all over online. And so one thing that I think is really important, and, we think about omnichannel as a bunch of point solutions. And I think the right way to think about omnichannel is having some foundational capabilities that really do aggregate customer profiles, understand customer interactions across the different channels that allows those different channels to kind of pull into and add data to that layer. So that's one. So that may be CRM system, it may be, aggregated customer profiles and identification. That's something that we do, but being able to allow the shopper to interact however they want, but capture that and make it accessible to every channel, I think is number one. Number two, and COVID forced this, and some retailers do it really well, others not so well. But the shopper, regardless of which channel they're with, if they're interacting with a brick and mortar traditional furniture retailer, they're doing that for a few reasons. Number one is, they want to be able to actually go see the product. Number two, though, that I think is really important is the personal assistance that comes with working with a traditional retailer, the sales associate. And so another challenge that I've seen a lot of retailers face is how do they take those sales associates and repurpose them to work the phones, to work in chat, to work in e-commerce, and really training them. And change is hard, right? Change is very difficult. Sales associates have varying degrees of technological adoption or willingness, if you might say. And so being able to take those sales associates, instead of waiting for door swings to happen before you start interacting with a customer, looking at what we call digital ups, the consumers that are on your site that are high intent consumers, they're spending a lot of time on your site, and engaging with them and providing that assistance either to get them to the store or transact the transaction virtually. And so, understanding all of the shopper interactions and being able to stitch them together across channels is one. Second is enabling your sales associates to also be omni-channel and reach out and engage with consumers no matter where those consumers are.
Reaching out via like social media and posting on their own personal social pages, or what? Can you give me some examples of kind of what you did in the last one?
Yeah, so it could be reaching out and creating a following on social media channels. It could be just strictly supporting chat, right? So live chat and showing sales associates how to engage in live chat and do it well. Whether it's virtual appointments, in-store appointments, all of the above. It's a mindset shift of, instead of the physical door swing, now it's a digital door swing, but that customer is just as valuable or almost as valuable as the one that is walking into the store. So it's technologically enabling them. And we've seen a lot of retailers adopt iPads and roll out iPads and tablets in store, which is good. But I think the biggest thing is changing the expectations of the sales associate to not just wait for those door swings, but actually get on social media or get on the website and start interacting. Mine the customer data. Who came in and didn't buy? Who came in and bought a month ago that I could follow up with proactively? And using that downtime in a way that's productive to drive incremental sales, even though the shopper is not in the physical channel.
I really like that last one too, because coming from my back history, spent quite a bit of time on the retail sales floor as a sales associate, engaging, working with consumers. A little bit before the time of the massive shift towards e-commerce and that shift in how retailers do business. But one of the things that was always a challenge for the sales team on the floors was this like battle relationship between the customers coming in the store and the retailer's website, stealing my business. They're taking my customers away from me, right? So there's like this animosity almost between the e-commerce experience and the in-store experience. And I love the ability to empower sales associates, that tip that you're giving, Laura, of empowering sales associates to actively reach out and create their own shoppers through some of those data points. That's pretty powerful stuff in terms of ways to mitigate some of those problems that you might have in the relationship between a sales associate and the e-commerce site, and really to create that cohesive team of really working to be customer centric and provide the best experience for consumers. So I love that tip. Very good. So Laura, what are some of the first steps if I'm a retailer and I'm starting to get into the omni game and trying to look at how I tackle this? What are my first things that I should be thinking about to develop an omni-channel strategy?
Yeah, I think the first thing is not mapping the customer experience and really looking at what differentiates you as a brand in store and how is that translating to online and to all of the presence, the third-party site presence. One of the big things that a shopper will go into the store for that is difficult online is the in-store vignettes, right? I see it staged, and that gives me inspiration. How are you taking that in-store inspiration and creating a similar experience on site to get the shopper to discover things they may not have otherwise discovered? You search a sofa or you search blue sofas, instead of showing the blue sofas, how do you show a vignette like you see in store? So I think, that's number one, is really not that specific solution, but really thinking about what differentiates you in store. Why do shoppers come to your store? And then creating a similar type experience, that similar brand experience on site. So I think that's number one. Number two is data. In the omni-channel or in digital, we have this huge benefit that everything is trackable. When you're in store, not as much is trackable, or it's a little more difficult to track. So the next thing is really starting to understand your customer and understand what data you're capturing online, how that's translating in store, and creating a data strategy to really tie the interactions together. Whether, I may be known as customer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 online and customer 6, 7, 8, 9 in store. How do I link those profiles so that I know when one is interacting here, it's actually the same person? And so creating that common customer profile. The other thing is the bridges, as Dustin mentioned, integrating the channels together. So the bridges of enabling interaction across channels. So again, leveraging the sales associates to engage in store, to engage online when the sales associate is in store, but also the other way around. So when the shopper is in store, this is our biggest piece of, it's our biggest encyclopedia, if you will, right? So how do I create experiences in store that allow the shopper to get more information to help make that decision in store? And so understanding that the phone is not just a price shopping tool, but it really is an information gathering tool, and enabling that. And then the third bridge, I would say, is really the suspend and resume, particularly when it comes to financing and transactions. Allowing the shopper to start in one channel, figure out what they want to do, really start the transaction or the financing application in earnest, and then finish it at a later time in a different channel without having to do all of the rework. So those are three areas that I think are important to get started.
A couple follow-up questions there. The suspend resume aspect of that's a curious one for me, and it's probably a really simple answer, but I'm just candidly admit I have no idea. So I'm just going to ask, what's the technology that's needed there to make that happen? Is it simply where they have like a profile set up online that they're signing into when they begin to start their application, and then they log back in once they go into a store or on social or whatever channel that's available for them to complete that transaction? Is simply them just logging back in again? Is it the initial application they're maybe filling out and getting some type of confirmation or unique identifier number that they're using later? What are the approaches that retailers or consumers are seeing in terms of addressing that?
Yeah, I think, well, when it comes to financing, obviously you can start an application, you have to identify yourself, and you can get a confirmation code and complete that. When it comes to browsing products, the login rate we see across the board, the shoppers that log in, it's a tiny fraction of the population. And so what we do is we actually create unique customer identifiers, and we persist them through the channels. And then as the shopper is more comfortable giving their email address, for instance, to get a coupon code, or to give their email address to schedule an appointment, we're aggregating that and then allowing the shopper or the sales associate to access that when the shopper goes into the store, either by ID, coupon code, email address. But it's starting off by capturing data, even of the anonymous customers, and as they engage, whether they ever identify themselves, still being able to use that unique identifier, or if they do identify themselves, then aggregating that, so when they identify themselves elsewhere, we can aggregate the data. So it really is a matter of customer identification and data aggregation across the channels.
All right, very good.
Some retailers might give cart codes as an example, which is another kind of simple way to do it.
To accomplish it. Okay. The other thing you said that was pretty interesting or that caught my attention was you were talking about incorporating, a customer goes on to the website and then heads into the store and like basically connecting that experience back and forth. How about store to site or, both, it's got to be bi-directional, right? Whether it's they're going to the
Absolutely.
site first and then heading to the store or going to the store and then heading to the website.
Mhm.
What are some of the unique attributes perhaps you can incorporate across those two channels that kind of make that a more cohesive experience for the consumer?
Some retailers we're seeing are taking in-store interactions with the sales associate. So to the extent the sales associate is using a tablet, they're identifying the customer when they're working through it, adding things to a list, and then that list becomes accessible on site. And so whether it's an anonymous code for a shopper that they get that's kind of randomized, or whether it's the email, but it's a sales associate also having access to similar tools that then become accessible or that are also accessible on site. So it's the consistency of experiences. Now those experiences might be customized for the specific channel a little bit, but having access to the data and visualizing it, surfacing it on site and in store is the important part. It's the connectedness of the data.
Very good. Dustin, I don't want to ignore your perspective in this question either, because you're coming from the retail experience there with a large team that's incorporating some of the stuff in there. Do you have any input or thoughts with regards to how your team's doing to incorporate some of that website type experience into the in-store experience and vice versa, other than like that seamless experience of like finishing a financing application? Is there anything else that maybe you guys are doing that's out of the box that you guys can share? I'm putting you in a kind of weird spot here. Maybe you don't have anything. I don't know. If you do, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, the things Laura pointed out are all things that we're actively working for, or in some cases have completed. I mean, the financing, that is a capability we've taken care of already. Consumer can start online, go in store, and then the suspend and resume of basically a consumer's cart. Also, at home we built out the capabilities of they started online in a cart and they know they're going in the store. Well, we've got the functionality to support that they go in and the sales associate can look that right up for them. Same type of thing is they go into the store, they get a quote put together, here's what we want to look at, but we want to go home, we want to think about it. Well, the consumer can pull that up from our e-commerce site and complete the transaction right there. And kind of that circle back, Corey, in that scenario, you mentioned earlier on the web versus the store. Well, we've done a lot of work at home in scenarios like that where, we can support that quote being purchased. Well, full credit goes to that sales associate. That wasn't a web sale. That wasn't an e-commerce sale. We built out our e-commerce in that way to be the payment portal. That was really it. We're there to facilitate that, but full credit goes back to the sales associate. And then other things that we're doing is, we've got various parts of our e-commerce site. We're looking to gather that first party data, basically leads. Hey, the consumer's interested in this. They're thinking about a design appointment or a flooring estimate or something like that. They take a quiz with us. Well, we take that data and we actually direct that back to the stores, to the sales teams, to the nearest location for that consumer. To help then the sales team. I mean, they're the experts on the furniture and on everything we sell and what we do and the services we offer. So we're giving them leads based off of e-commerce activity for them to reach out to the consumers and try to get them into the store, help them out, reach out by email, give them a phone call, send them a text, see if they need your help. Kind of linking that. Here's what we're experts at. Here's what we know really well. Let's get you connected to the consumer who's looking. Hopefully it's one of those things that sets us apart from those 100% e-com players out there in the world.
Very cool. And Dustin, I got to say, you could not have set me up with a better segue into circling back to the topic of sales associate versus online website and that, animosity that may exist there when you brought it back up a moment ago, because we have an excellent question that just came in from the audience here that I'd love to throw your direction and get your thoughts on. And you kind of already addressed it, but I just wanted to dive in a little deeper and see if there was any other feedback or thoughts you have there. The question very specifically was just how to best resolve the reluctance of sales associates to embrace their opportunities online and over the phone. what kind of training or incentives do you suggest, or any other ideas? And you mentioned the fact, I'll let you kind of reiterate that, mention the fact that the sale, even though it may start on the website, the sales associate still gets credit for that, correct?
Yeah, so if it starts on the website and the consumer goes in the store, well, the sales associate gets full credit for that. You know, we didn't set up a process. Oh, this started on the web, I get half credit. No, it's you closed it, you can have it. And then the reverse of that, though, you know, is if the web closed it, well, we still give that credit back to the sales associate. You did all the work to make the recommendations, work with the client to build out this ticket. The web's here just to support you, to help be able to close that without that consumer having to drive back into the store on the day that you're in at a time, you know. Well, no, the ultimate convenience, pull up the web at midnight if you want and make your purchase. We're here to support that. So a lot of our focus to help fight that, you know, us versus them, is us putting in efforts and training on, here's how the web is a tool for you. Here's how you can use it. Here's features we're putting on there that, yes, are also there for the consumers that are, you know, in their early awareness phases, they're doing research, but there's also features on here as a sales associate. Pull the web up. Here, we've got recommendations for products that look well with this, or recommendations on, here's decor, area rugs and other items that look well with this piece. Use that as a tool to work with the consumer on, show some visualizations on, hey, here's things that look well together. So our goal is, again, like I said, the web is a tool. It's our gateway to the, you know, it's our front door for consumers to get into, but it's also a tool for the sales associates to leverage to hopefully better the experience with the customer and help them get to that sale that much quicker.
It sounds like that's an awesome opportunity, the way you guys are setting that up to, you know, like I said, bridge that gap between those two parties, the website and the sales associate, and to Laura's points earlier of empowering them to be able to reach out and connect with those consumers when the data is sent their way, as far as who's shopping, what they're shopping for, and creating those warm leads for them, essentially, to get out there and basically just not waiting for those door swings to happen, but empowering them to get out there and you know, make it happen themselves. So that's awesome. Thank you for the tips and advice there. So, all right. I guess let's talk a little bit about some best practices. Are there any specific best practices that you guys would recommend for retailers when it comes to maximizing the experience for them across those omni channels, specifically the interactions for consumers, right? They're getting online, they're, you know, checking out the website, they're looking at social media, they may be heading into the locations, hitting on all those different channels that are there. What are some of the things that a retailer really should be focused on to make sure that that's super simple? I feel this is a little bit of a rehash of our earlier questions, but if any best practices you guys think when we're talking about this in terms of you know, taking advantage of maximizing those customer interactions. I'll throw that out there for either one of you. If Dustin, if you have anything, or Laura, anything you'd add when it comes to that, in addition to what we've been talking about so far.
I mean, the only thing I mean, nothing really best practice. I guess the one thing would point out is the data collection. I mean, a lot of this relies on you being able to connect the data from different channels. And so it's looking for those in those channels, and whether it's on your own site, what are good points where we can collect some additional data from the consumer, so we can make those links, so we can ID that consumer from that anonymous browser to the actual, this is the customer. There's no easy solution to that. There's no out of the box, hey, go buy this and this will do everything for you. Unfortunately, it's kind of, you got to look at each channel and everything. But I can tell you, you know, for those that are, you know, there's a lot of privacy law changes and things like that coming out nowadays. You know, iOS updated, you know, Facebook, you got to, or not Facebook, it affects Facebook, but iOS, you've got to opt into the marketing channel options there. Google Chrome just announced late, you know, sometime today that, you know, they announced a while ago they were going to drop cookies from Chrome. They announced today, I think they moved that out to 2023. But essentially where I'm going with it, first party data is going to be more and more important to retailers because we're going to lose some of the interconnectivity we've gotten through these other channels based off of having pixels and things like that on our site. Well, there's the shift in the privacy, you know, just in the tech world now, that's going to be harder and harder to do. So, you know, luckily furniture retailers, we're not cash and carry. Usually, you know, you've got a customer name, you've got an address, phone numbers, and like that. It's going to be more important for us to gather that information because we're going to need to use that to market even better.
And specifically with regards to that, since you brought it up, and it's good to hear that we got a little more time with regards to the cookies for retailers to kind of adapt to that new world of privacy, because that seemed like that was going to be a pretty big concern that was coming up pretty abruptly. So that's good to hear. But in terms of home, has there been anything that you guys have been strategizing on as far as ways to do a stronger job of capturing that first party data beyond the typical consumer purchase that are made in store?
That's what we've got, various parts on our site where we're taking, we're requesting information from consumers, trying to get that information from them. We're exploring other channels where we can get that data shared to us, whether it's, Facebook's got they've got a lead integration capability. You can run a lead ad. So we're looking at things like that, where the consumer just right there on Facebook through the app sees an ad and they can provide us, name and email address or whatever information we want, and that can get funneled back to us. So looking to explore that more and more. Definitely now with the shift we're seeing in, like I said, that connectivity is going to be going away eventually, and so we're going to have to think of more ways outside of the box to get that data if we want to actual, target ads and get our message in front of the consumer.
And you mentioned email and customer name. Obviously, those are important ones. Those, phone number, I'd assume as well too. Are there any other specific data points that you would really encourage retailers to focus on? Like, I mean, there's a gazillion different points that are out there, right? Data points that they could collect. Which ones should they be focusing on, would you say?
Well, email is probably one of the most important, because that doesn't move around. I mean, your address can change, your phone number can occasionally change too. You switch jobs or something like that. I mean, nowadays your cell phone number usually sticks around. So email is good. You obviously got to watch out. A lot of people nowadays have more than one email address, so it's trying to coax out I don't want the junk email address. I want your real one that you check on a regular basis. But that's I don't have an easy solution on how to get that. Luckily, things like our in-store purchases and stuff like that, that's usually more the one you get for that, so you can use that in your data analysis. You can compare that to, I think these two are the same consumer on the email marketing platform. All the emails don't match. Okay, well, we have an idea now that email is the marketing or junk email that they may or may not be looking at.
Very good. I'm glad you. That's right.
I would add to a couple of the points Dustin made. In terms of the data to collect, and this might sound really simple, but you want to understand what products the shopper is looking at, so you can really understand what their preferences are. And so if this shopper tends to shop in this particular price point, or they tend to shop this particular style of furniture or this particular brand, understanding that, so it's not personally identifiable information, but to the extent you can enrich that customer profile to really understand that enables personalization. And so those data points, while they're not going to help you identify or tie a specific customer, even within that channel, it's very powerful to understand. And then if I can go back to your earlier question about how do you get shoppers to actually identify themselves, to the extent that you can make it a really engaging experience, that will help you, because most shoppers, when they're shopping for furniture, it's usually a life event that's triggering it. And so when they're shopping for a whole room full, or they're shopping for a few items, not just one. And the reason Pinterest grew, for instance, so quickly is because shoppers and people could pin ideas for high consideration purchases and keep going back to it. So to the extent you can create that type of an experience that helps them really decide and filter through different options and put things together, that will get them to want to come back and come back and come back, and eventually they will identify themselves. So we've seen that when we put, for instance, a special offer call to action on the PDP with our module, and shoppers click around, they click the special offer, they're willing to give up their email. They're willing to email themselves the ideas that they've built on the website. And so creating those little kind of sub experiences that get the shopper to come back and get the shopper to want to remember to come back to you or remember it somehow is also really important. And it's a non-threatening way, and it's not in your face. It's a way to be helpful to the customer, to help them through this high consideration, kind of long lead time purchase item or experience.
Very good. So Laura, and specifically, I'm going to ask a little bit about Shoptelligence really quick here, because that's a specialty of your guys's, right? The ability to overlay on top of a website, the ability to I'll give you the chance. How about you say it? 'Cause I'm not the expert, you are. What does Shoptelligence do in terms of that, providing the perfect pieces to kind of align with what somebody's interested in?
Yeah, so Shoptelligence really is, the basic platform has two pieces. The first one is this merchandising brain that's been trained to reason like a designer. And then the second one is the aggregation and accumulation of the customer profile. Those two things go together to personalize merchandise assortments, and then they manifest in e-commerce, they manifest in store, they manifest in the site to store, as well as the post-purchase and the email. And so what Shoptelligence is really a design assistant that can help the consumer as well as the sales associate to grow the ticket and grow customer lifetime value, whether it's in store or online, wherever it may be. And so that's in a nutshell what we do. Omnichannel is kind of baked into our ethos, as is personalized merchandising.
And Dustin, is that system something that Home has in place on their website?
Yep, we've used Shoptelligence now for Laura would have to go and more 2, 3, 4 years now. So it's been a while. We've had them, and that's what the personalization and those product recommendations is what initially drew us to Shoptelligence and what that could offer. On our site, it was something allowed me to somebody who specialized it did it well without me having to have my team build it out and go through all the headaches and trials and errors. And so, and then been able to working with Laura's team on, okay, how can we maximize this more? And their team is constantly looking to enhance that omni-channel experience that like she said, they've got baked into their platform.
And what type of, if you don't mind me asking, I don't want to ask specific numbers or about results, but in terms of like consumers, your customers, and how they've adopted and accepted that, or how they're interacting with that, what type of feedback have you gotten from consumers with regards to that system being in place? And
what we've seen is longer time on site. I mean, that was one of the biggest things. You got that interaction that the consumer is engaging with, which then obviously the longer they're on the site, the higher the probability then gets to be that they're going to transact with us, whether it's on the site then and there or in the store. So yeah, that tool is we've seen that with the numbers from Laura's team, is that those consumers that engage with it stick around much longer than our averages. And it's good that they see they start engaging with other products on our site too. So
perfect. So I have a question that just dropped in from the audience here. I want to throw to, it's actually aimed at both of you. Specifically, does Home or Laura, do any of your clients use geofencing to identify consumers who visit a store and connect that info with consumers who have been on the website? So I'll start with you, Dustin, if you don't mind. Is that something you guys are doing? Are you using geofencing at all at Home?
We use geofencing in some of our advertising channels as a way to, okay, they were in the store, and then further, follow up on targeted ads as they go outside the store. And so we've used it in that sense. We haven't used it to directly link it to, okay, it's this specific consumer. We haven't gotten to that granularity. And to be honest, not even sure if you can get to that granularity with the privacy laws and everything out there. But we do use geofencing as an advertising channel.
That makes sense. Laura, any alternative perspectives to add to that? Dustin made a great point about the privacy laws and whatnot, but
yeah, geofencing, to the extent if you're operating in local markets, you can really focus on those markets. That will boost your return on investment. We have clients that use geofencing, and it's a great capability to boost marketing ROI.
Perfect. All right, and then on that same line about tracking consumers across those different channels, let's talk about that a little bit, because that seems like that's an important piece of this, right? That's the whole idea, is creating that seamless experience across all the different channels. And so I'm just kind of curious about the measurement. Well, how do you track across all those channels? We talked a little bit about that in regards to like QR codes, or customer specific codes that can kind of identify when one person's moving from an in-store experience to online experience, or vice versa, or the different channels that they're coming through. But just would love to hear a little bit more about that, about the measuring the effectiveness of the different channels that we have there, especially when there's a bunch of them. And then a little bit maybe too, if you have any feedback, Laura, on what channels are optimal with local demographics. Is there a specific channel that they should be focused on, or retailers should be more focused on local demographics?
In terms of local demographics, obviously search engine optimization, search engine marketing, you really want to focus. And I know a lot of the third-party sites offer localization. So that's important. And one of the big advantages of being a traditional brick and mortar retailer is really knowing your local market, serving your local market, merchandising for your local market. And so there is always value there.
Perfect. All right. So technology-wise, Dustin, you've mentioned already that there are a gazillion tools out there that could be used. Laura's shaking her head. Yeah, she's like,
Proliferation.
Right. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Like do we see any trends out there with specific platforms or specific tools that maybe retailers should be really looking at to assist with some of that? Laura, feel free to go for a plug.
Yeah, I mean, there's an ever-growing list of solution providers out there. You've got to vet each one to figure out, is there actually any substance to this, or is it, it doesn't really give you any extra insight into anything. I mean, that's the unfortunate thing is there's platforms out there. Laura mentioned the stitching together the IDs out there, a consumer ID from the different channels. There are ways, and there are platform providers out there that can help do that. They have a significant cost investment to do that. We've looked at them. Home hasn't pulled the trigger on something like that just because there's a big cost to that. And so for us, it's kind of platform specific, using, again, what capabilities are already in there to do some of that kind of linking already where we can, and relying on the platform analytics to figure out, okay, yeah, this is driving traffic or not driving traffic, when we link it up to our traffic, our e-commerce traffic or our in-store traffic numbers. Yeah.
So the way I look at the proliferation of tools, and there are many, there's lots. I think proliferation in general of tools is a good thing, because that means there's innovation happening. And so there's positivity that's going to come out of it. But from my perspective, looking at it from a KPI standpoint is particularly clarifying. So in my mind, there are 4 KPIs that I think are really important. The first one is how many visitors, what's your volume, how much are you able to drive new customer acquisition or new eyeballs or engagers. The second one is, to what degree am I able to convert them? The third one is, to what degree am I able to maximize the value of that ticket? And then the fourth one is, to what degree am I able to get them to come back, i.e. increase customer lifetime value? And so if you kind of bucket tools into those KPIs, there's a lot of marketing, digital marketing, and that is a whole science unto itself of the mix, right? The mix of digital, traditional, even within digital, to drive new traffic. And localization is really important there. The second one of driving conversion is a matter of how much confidence can you build in the consumer that you are the right retailer to purchase from, and the item that they're looking at is valuable and they have the confidence to buy. There are tools out there. Product reviews sounds simple, but not many retailers today have product reviews in home furnishings. You've got product visualization, the 3D, the spinner and whatnot. You've got good product data, which is an investment unto itself. All of those are really important, and good product data also, gets into SEO. And so there are a variety of conversion tools, and then sales associate enablement. To what degree are they informed, and can they reach out to get the sale, right? We talked about that. In terms of AOV, what can you do from a merchandising standpoint? This is a lot of where Shoptelligence comes in. How do you build the ticket? How do you add the rug to the sofa? How do you add the chair to the sofa? How do you add the desk chair to the desk, et cetera? And so that's focused on AOV. And then the fourth one is the repeat visits to drive up customer lifetime value. And that all comes down to personalized marketing. This is where email is particularly effective. Leveraging financing to market against, the remaining credit, very valuable, but doing it in a personalized way that isn't, hey, I sold you, for instance, I bought an espresso machine, stop marketing espresso machines to me. Give me the espresso, give me the coffee cup, et cetera. And so being able to understand what that shopper's objective is and really market. But to the extent you can distill these tools down through a prism of financial results, it really helps to clarify the situation. And some tools, like the added customer view, that's going to help all of them, right? That's synergistic to all of them. But there are a lot of these tools you can really bucket into these different areas and then start comparing, because while it may not be the same functionality, one may have a higher conversion rate lift. One might have, and comparing them based on the business results can really help you kind of sift through that.
Yeah, narrow things down and make sense of it. So you mentioned a couple things that were interesting. You mentioned reviews, and not many retailers are that was kind of surprising, actually. It seems like it's so common now to see reviews across the different platforms and whatnot. So I was really surprised by that one, that a lot of retailers still aren't doing that. In terms of integrating that into the omni-channel experience, any tips or feedback? Obviously, if you're not
integrate it,
get them.
You look at Amazon Go, right? Amazon Go and the stores, they actually have the reviews in the product tags, the electronic product tags. Reviews give confidence, and having a review builds more confidence, even if it's a poor review, than having no review, which is counterintuitive, but it's, it is, and the data says that. And so it's important, and some of our clients we integrate reviews, for instance, into the recommendations we make where that data is available, but it's important.
Perfect. All right, we have just a couple minutes left here in our conversation. It's been super valuable so far. Lots of good takeaways for our audience that's listening in terms of how they can approach their omni-channel experience, and trying to do their best to sift through how to approach finding the right tools, sift through the right types of data points to be looking at, and understanding all that to create that seamless experience. I just kind of want to take a quick minute to kind of wrap up today's call a little bit and give you guys each just an opportunity to kind of add anything that you think that from a retailer's perspective, if there was, one thing that they really need to focus on, moving forward here. Obviously every retailer that's listening in is maybe at a different point in their journey in the omni-channel experience and kind of creating that. But if there was one piece of advice, one thing that you would really tell somebody to take away, what would you hone them on? What would you focus them on? I'll start with you, Dustin, if you don't mind, and then throw that same question over to Laura.
Yeah, I guess the theme really about omnichannel is that seamless experience between the channels, and so it's kind of understanding your consumer, where they're at, where they've been, and so given that every retailer is going to be at varying degrees and varying levels of capabilities of doing that, it's identifying those spots where you do know specific pieces of information about your consumer that you can then adapt your marketing for. So whether it's, again, like I think I've mentioned earlier, that they bought a living room set. Well, as Laura even mentioned, she bought an espresso machine. Quit marketing espresso machines. Well, if they bought a living room set, adjust your marketing if you can identify that you don't push the living room anymore. You should be pushing decor and accents, area rugs, things like that, complementary items to that. And then when you can, obviously put up triggers on, okay, well, what's the next area we think that this consumer is going to be purchasing? Is dining what we believe their next purchase? Then shift your marketing to do that. So you're not going to be able to do everything at once. So identify those spots where you can trigger and do things based off the information you do have. And also then identify those areas where if we only had this information, our systems would allow us to do it. Well, then figure out how do you get that information, whether it's adding, new interactions on your e-commerce site or different data collection methods that you've got for in-store.
And that's a super quick follow-up question that Dustin, you mentioned earlier, or right in the middle of that, trying to forecast or predict what the consumer is going to want to look at next, right? They're already done with the living room. Maybe it's the dining room that they want next. Any advice or tips for retailers on how to best approach forecasting that, or trying to figure out what it is the consumer wants next? Is it all based off of consumer data and what they've kind of clicked on the website, or are there trends associated with the specific products they're identifying?
Yeah, for us, it's looking at our purchase history. The home's been around for long enough that we've got quite the collection, purchase history. So it's analyzing that and trying to understand, okay, our consumers in our market, if they buy a sofa today, what's the likelihood of that they're going to buy a mattress next or dining next? Don't have the algorithm figured out that I can just say, hey, here you go, guys, go. It's 25 days after this kind of purchase. No, it's you're going to have to do that analysis yourself, and just trying to figure that out. And again, it's using that first party data that we've got access to try to identify those things so we can market correctly to our consumers.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Laura, from your side, any one thing you'd suggest to retailers listening in today that you'd say, focusing on this? This is the most important key to a successful omnichannel experience.
I am going to wholeheartedly agree with Dustin. And I'll just add to it, which is don't let the complexity or the perceived complexity of this stop you. There are small things that you can do. Look at your store experience. How do you take those differences that really create value in store, bring them online? How do you stitch together the profile? But just one action at a time, looking at it from a financial standpoint. How is it going to help you, and what are the returns you can expect to see, will allow you to eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much today for joining us, for providing your valuable insights and experiences, Dustin, through home, and Laura, through all of your time and energy in this sector. We really appreciate all of your feedback and thoughts.
But thank you both for joining and taking some time today to jump onto the call and share your expertise and knowledge. We really, really greatly appreciate that. For everyone tuning in, there are a couple downloadable PDFs as well too on the platform here. You can see on the lower right-hand side some handouts. There is a What is Omnichannel white paper that you can read a little bit more about Omnichannel, get some more context behind things. And then there's also a Shoptelligence site to store PDF and Shoptelligence offerings, which can tell you a little bit more about their services and how they can help your business as well too, and making your omnichannel experience that much stronger for your consumers. So thanks again, everyone, for joining today's call. Thank you to Laura and Dustin. We appreciate you both once more. Wishing everyone out there success and health. Have a great one, and we hope to see you next time. Take care, everyone.